Okay. Hello, everybody.
Welcome to this session.
Yeah. And we'll kick off straight away, but we would like to ask you a question for you to put in in the chat box. What was the worst style choice you have ever made, or worst haircut you ever had? That's the question. Could you put your answer in the chat box, please? And well, I guess we can kick it off.
Yeah.
Anita. The worst haircut I ever had was a flat top. I don't know whether you know what a flat top is. It's shaved all around the side and very short on top, but totally flat. I used to cut it with a special kind of comb and then just razor it back, so it was totally flat on top.
Oh my God! It's like the best president.
It was supposed to be cool.
Not cool at all.
In the 80s.
Yeah, for me, I was like, my haircut was like richest one right now, and that's why people call me boys instead of girl. Yeah, and that's why now I have longer hair. Yeah.
So you're saying my haircut is very uncool?
I'm not saying this, but not for me. Sorry.
Okay, I don't know whether we got any replies in the chat box. Can you see, Anita?
Not really.
Justin, can you show us any? Oh, there we go.
Oh, yes.
What have we got, Anita?
Oh, bob cuts.
Bob cuts?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mullet, yeah.
Oh, a mullet.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
and a pixie. Is that
pixie cut?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Lauren, you can show us the photo later on, and William as well. Photos, please. Okay, thank you very much for coming to the session. We'd like to introduce ourselves, first of all. My name is Richard Cowler, and I'm an English language, literature and drama teacher by trade, and now a regional net coordinator with the native speaking English teacher section at the Education Bureau here in Hong Kong. And part of this role involves working as an educational consultant with publicly funded schools and teachers.
Yes, and my name is Anita Ma, and I'm the vice panel chair at Lock Sin Tong U Can Hing Secondary School, where I've been teaching for 12 years. Yeah, 12 years. And I'm now a secondary teacher with the native speaking English teaching section at the Education Bureau. I split my time between my school and the next section.
Right, let's get on straight away to deal with our question. And the answer to our question, which you might well guess, is yes, it can. Can makerspace and design thinking help English language learning in local Hong Kong schools? Yes, it can.
Yeah, and in our presentation today, we are going to show you how it does, and by sharing what we have done in 2 local schools here in Hong Kong.
And importantly, for 21st century learning, it has enabled teachers to coach students in generic skills, values, and attitudes that are important to 21st century learning. And in our presentation today, we're going to show you how that has happened in our project schools and how we have tried to do that through makerspace and design thinking. So, firstly, let me tell you about the scheme that my section supports, which is called the Native Speaking English Teacher Scheme, the NET scheme for short. It's a government-funded program that allows every primary and secondary school in Hong Kong, that's roughly 800 schools, to employ a native-speaking English teacher, or NET for short. And my team works with secondary schools and teachers, which is why I've been collaborating with my colleague, Anita.
Yeah.
You can see in those photos a few snapshots of what NETs do in schools and what we do in the NET section to support the scheme and to support the NETs. It involves enriching the school environment with authentic English experiences, collaborating with our local colleagues to introduce innovative pedagogy and strengthen teaching capacity. The NET section is also responsible for providing literacy programs at the primary level, continue professional development at primary and secondary level, and providing Hong Kong-wide competitions. I'm responsible at the moment for leading our improvised drama competition, Speak Up, Act Out, in which over 70 schools participate. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little shot of some of the students on stage in that competition. So an important aspect of our work at the next section are our projects, what we call seed projects, where we collaborate with schools and teachers to implement a new initiative like the one that we're talking about today, Makerspace. And the seed project involves school-based training, co-planning units of work together, and following the implementation of those units of work with lesson observation and feedback. My role in that is also fulfilling the role of the NET scheme, trying to enrich the school-based curriculum, promoting that good pedagogy, and collaborating with my local teacher colleagues. The two schools that I've been involved with in our Makerspace project are Shun Tak Fraternal Association, Siward Wu College, and Lot Sing Tong U Can Hing Secondary School. And again, this is that's where Anita teaches, and that's why we've been working together over the last, well, over 2 years.
2 years already.
2 years and a bit. Yeah. So now, the English language curriculum. So what we have in the curriculum, well, in terms of the local context of the curriculum, and the local context of our schools here, what we can say is that there are an incredibly large number of very hardworking and highly dedicated teachers in the local system. And they provide very strong role models for the students and instill positive and responsible values in them. But in terms of the curriculum, there is room for improvement. And we can say really that our English language curriculum is characterized by a gap and sometimes a gulf between the central curriculum and the school-based curriculum. So here are some things that the central curriculum advocates, some of the overall aims and strategies for development that are suggested in the central curriculum. For example, it promotes generic skills, values and attitudes, like the 21st century skills that we're going to talk about today, purposeful, integrative and creative use of language, a task-based approach, multimodality, assessment for and as learning. Now, in the school-based curriculum, what we have is quite a significant washback from the very high stakes HK-DSE exam, which is the gatekeeper exam for the further education system and the exam that all students take when they graduate from secondary schools here in Hong Kong. Yeah. And what that means is that there can be more of or a lot of exam practice and drilling, also coexisting with traditional teaching and learning methods. Sometimes a concept that the curriculum must be covered, even when it's at the expense of learning. So all of the content of the curriculum needs to be presented to the students and covered, regardless of whether the students have learnt it or can learn it or not, and an over-reliance on textbooks. So it's important to tell you that the central curriculum that we have, the curriculum documents, are guides or compasses for the schools to use. They're not mandated. Schools have a choice about how to apply them. And of course, there's a positive about this too, because that flexibility allows schools to address the needs of their students and also to adapt it for their students' interests. So it's not totally one-sided, but there is this problem, and that's something that the project tries to address. Sorry, the last point there, less collaborative and less student-centered approach. Okay. Now, when we were addressing this issue of the obstacles in the way of innovation, we were inspired by the session at this conference given by Professor Guy Claxton, encouraging us in his keynote, 21st Century Learning and How to Do It. And one of the things that he encouraged us to do was to take notes of Edward de Bono's idea to be water thinkers and not rock thinkers. Now, if you're a rock thinker, then you think about the obstacles that are in your path. And you think, too many obstacles, I can't go down that road. If you're a water thinker, then you think about ways to go around those obstacles, around or over those obstacles, like water as it passes over rocks. So this is a very useful phrase for us. There are plenty of rocks in the local Hong Kong school system, and we have to look for ways around them or to work with them and to find opportunities to teach in ways that encourage the development of 21st century learning. As Professor Claxton also points out, we don't have to abandon preparation for important exams in doing that. These are important and need to be catered for, absolutely. But we can find ways around them, and we can also keep faith with the fact that if we coach students to be creative, collaborative problem solvers, for example, in the end, it will yield better results for their examinations. And my colleague, Anita, is going to talk later about how she believes that makerspace in junior secondary can benefit her students when they reach their senior secondary HKDSE exams. Okay, so our makerspace project is our attempt to be water thinkers. It was initiated by our colleague, William Cheng, who heads up the team that I work in. And it's called Developing Students' Creativity, Collaboration and Problem-Solving Skills Through Creating the Makerspace in the Secondary English Language Classroom. And the project was initiated to develop opportunities to promote 21st century learning skills, to experiment with thinking routines, and to further broaden the range of content in the English curriculum. This is a 4-year project, and we're 3 years into it. So in our project, we define makerspace with these terms as providing students with a place where they can explore ideas, learn how to use tools and materials, both physical and virtual ones, develop creative projects, sometimes in response to a problem or an issue that they see. And it's defined by a mindset of agency, tinkering, and experimentation, discovery, creativity, collaboration, problem solving, etc. Learning from the process of doing that. So it's about developing a mindset, much more than it is about having a physical space for makerspace. In the project, we used 4 thinking routines from Project Zero. We found the ones written for younger children to be very useful in some of our schools. And we use design thinking as a method, particularly in the designing and making stages of projects that we did at schools. And we found David Lee's description in his book, Design Thinking in the Classroom, to be very useful in this regard. Okay, so a quick overview of some of the work that was done in our schools. This was an idea that was thrown around at Kwun Tong Government Secondary School. And it's about using thinking routines and the maker mindset to create a stop motion video with these pipe cleaner people for the students to show their understanding of the story, the characters, and the relationships in Billy's family. Here we have Anita's school, LSTU Kan Hing, and we can see Anita Ma and her colleague Priscilla. Anita's our seconded teacher, and you can see her there using the thinking routines, and she's going to go into much more detail and show you some highlights from the work that she did at her school. And this is the work at Marymount Secondary School, and the teacher who's leading that project there, Lauren Minnie, is also presenting at this conference. Her session is called Be a Change Maker, the story of the Makerspace Magic Project at the MSS Makerspace Magic Project. And we encourage you to check out her session. She's already delivered that, and there should be a recording on the site if you'd like to find out more about Lauren's great work at Marymount. So, in talking about how the project has been implemented, we want to talk about it in 3 respects: how it's helped to enrich the content of the English language curriculum, increasing the range of topics, issues, and questions that are normally included in English lessons; to talk about the opportunities for language learning, skills, and learning about positive values and attitudes; and also how the project has called for pedagogical approaches which are necessary for makerspace and design thinking and help the project to be delivered successfully. And we've got these yellow, green, and what's this color? Light blue. Cyan. Oh, very nice. Yeah. Okay. Boxes that you're going to see popping up on different slides to give you a bit of signposting as we go through the presentation. Okay, so on to our first school, which is Shuntak Fraternal Association Siwardwu College, and they cooperated with us last year in the project. And you can see the teacher in charge here, Adam Wittenberg, working with his students, and one of the students displaying his package, which is a prototype for some Christmas sweets and candy that was developed during the project. Siwardwu College is actually the school that I taught in when I first arrived here in Hong Kong in 2006. So I know it really well. I taught there for 4 years. It's a Chinese medium of instruction school. So that means that most subjects are taught in Chinese, apart from English, obviously. And it has about 700 students, mainly in the low average to average ability, with a sprinkling of students who are a little bit above average. So ranges of ability in English vary quite a lot, from a few students who can communicate quite freely in English in terms of speaking and writing, and going down to students who struggle to do so. So let's give you a quick idea about the curriculum before the project started and during the setup phase. Adam was working in S1, which is secondary 1, the first grade level at secondary school here. And he was teaching a language arts and oral lesson to each class in S1 once per teaching cycle, which was 10 days. So he would see half classes actually, and each class once per cycle. And this is quite a typical deployment for a net. The school wants as many students exposed to the net as possible, but it does offer the challenge of how this lesson is integrated into the main curriculum, and also the kind of identity that it has. At worst, in other schools in Hong Kong, it can be that this might be the fun lesson, the lesson where they go and see the net, but is it a lesson in which the students are really engaged and are really learning? And that was certainly a problem that I faced when I was working at Siwardwu when I first arrived in 2006, was how to turn those lessons into something meaningful and engaging for the students. And really, this was Adam's idea about how he could get the most value for the students out of those lessons. So when he was doing it as a language arts and oral lesson, he was working with a class reader, doing some phonics work and some speaking practice. And I think we can definitely say it was not really well-defined or a coherent course. So Adam had an interest in teaching design and had been asked by the principal to support the IT department to help students to prepare marketing materials and deliver a presentation in English for an app that they were developing in their IT class. And he had a very strong interest in teaching design and some ideas about how he would do that. And the focus question, which we developed, was how can we design marketing materials to appeal to a target audience, marketing materials for an app to appeal to a target audience. So we had a lot of expected project outcomes, but here are just a few. So in terms of attitude related, we wanted to coach positivity, agency, perseverance, a serious attitude to English as well. In terms of language, for example, using the vocabulary for product packaging, slogans, logos, and market research. Language skills related, a very important one was presenting ideas about apps and their commercial and marketing materials clearly in spoken English. Generic skills, problem solving, collaborating, being creative, being reflective. Knowledge related, important one was understanding the design thinking process and makerspace thinking routines. So yeah, a lot of a lot of outcomes, quite ambitious. Okay, those are just an example of a few. So our overarching structure was exploring in term 1 and then applying in term 2. So we hope that the students could explore different marketing methods and different aspects of marketing in term 1, and they could then apply this in term 2 to the app that they were developing in their IT classes. So at the beginning, the students brainstormed some ideas for different companies, and this is what they came up with: all fictional companies: Kelly's Kindergarten, Sam's Sportswear, Yo-Yo's Ice Cream, and Harry's Healthy Food. So using the 4 thinking routines of Makerspace, students examined and deconstructed their own versions of logos and slogans and product packaging, and students were given plenty of time throughout this whole process to give feedback, also to get feedback from the teacher, present their ideas and their design process back to the class. So let's have a look at one example lesson focusing on logos and see what kind of work that Adam did in the classroom. So the focus question was, how do logos work and how do they influence us? And among the objectives were using the thinking routine, parts, purposes, and complexities. Exploring multimodality, the way that images are used in logos along with text and the synergy between them. And coaching some curiosity and creativity. Curiosity about what logos are and how they work, and how we can encourage students to look closely at them through the thinking routine, and as well creativity, because we're asking the students to develop their own logos for their own companies. So Adam started by looking at some logos in context, looking at, for example, this McDonald's ad, and the students were considering in a group discussion what is being advertised, how it makes them feel, what do they like or dislike about it, what's your favorite advertisement in English at the moment? Questions like that to start them off, seeing logos in the context that they would find them in adverts on billboards and TV and other media around Hong Kong. Other aspects of what Adam did. So they looked at types of logo design. On the right there, you can see the different types of logo design. And this was a real strength of what Adam did, is to give the students some detailed input into the different ways that logos are designed. And then they looked at some famous logos, and you can see one in the middle here, the Tour de France logo, and what makes those so effective. And this is a great one with a kind of a hidden or integrated image in it of what it represents. It's the Tour de France logo, and you can see the cyclist in the R there with the round circle wheel in it. And that was a great one for the students to see whether they could spot these images and integrated symbols or words inside the logos that presented things, presented the company or the event in a positive way. And they used, on the far left, parts, purposes, and complexities to look closely at the logos and identify their component parts of text, color, and images, the purpose of each part, and then how they all work together to promote that company or event. And there were some steps that led to the students designing their own logo, of course. Now, let's now look at term 2. So when we got to term 2, the COVID pandemic was really hitting, and that meant that the students weren't able to create the app in their IT lessons. So what we did was to continue with our work, but we couldn't collaborate then with the IT department, unfortunately. So then term 2 became all about learning and utilizing the design thinking process to develop a user interface and content on an app that would be useful to their customers and help promote the brand of those fictitious companies that they created in term 1. So for the app design, we used Google Slides to create both the design and the content. It was useful in many ways. Students could experiment with text, image, color, and layout using Google Slides. They could also work together. Part of this work was done online during the pandemic when the students were working from home, and part of it in the classroom. So it helped that collaborative nature of it, which is also a very important goal for the project. And we also use the hyperlink function inside Google Slides, and that mimics the way that an app works. What happens is that you can apply that hyperlink to any image on a slide, and then when you click on it, it will take you to the relevant page. So for example, in Brian's dog walking diary, you can see there the app in the center of the page. If you click on the image of the dog park, which is top center left, then it would take you to a Google map page showing you where the nearest dog-friendly parks are to you. So how did we do it? We took advantage of the design thinking process. It was very useful here, and I'll take you through a few steps. Firstly, for the first stage, empathize, students use Google Form to survey interests and how they, what their customers are interested in and how they use apps, and they use their classmates and their family as the target audience for the app. In the define stage, students analyze the data from the survey. Having used Google Form, it was very easy to use the data that's automatically produced with Google Form to analyze it, highlight the key findings, and write a problem statement. How might we question? For example, how might we help our business by making an English learning app with games and videos that students can play with family and friends? Okay, in the ideate step, students are generating ideas in order to illustrate. Want to tell you how, the students were using some technology here, and how in the ideate step, we can coach some creativity with a divergent and convergent thinking routine. So the key here was that students were first using divergent thinking process, where they're encouraged to think of as many ideas as possible. However complicated, crazy, glamorous they might be. And then a convergent thinking process where we're looking at ideas which are more practical or relevant to the goal that we have. And through this device, we could coach the students to become more creative. So there are lots of opportunities I think, that we give in class to allow students to be creative, but there are not so many opportunities that we have to coach them to be more creative. And using routines like this very much help them to do that, give them a scaffold and support them in this process. So in this screenshot, Adam and his students were using Google Jamboard to do this process. Adam said about this process, we began with divergent thinking. We added as many ideas as we could to our Jamboard, hoping to influence and inspire one another. When we were satisfied with the quantity of ideas, we discussed and chose the quality ones, also called convergent thinking. And I think the ideas on the left here are the ones that they chose for their app. So that's me finished off, but just to say, at the end of that project, the students presented their app to the audience. They did that oral presentation, which was a key goal and outcome that we wanted them to get out of the project. And now I'll hand over to Anita, who's going to tell you more about Loxington You Can Hing.
Okay, so now let me give you some background information of my school. It is also a Chinese medium of instruction school, which means most subjects are taught in Chinese. We have mostly lower than average students, and an important feature of our school that it is a STEM school, and we have a maker and a STEM curriculum in junior forms. We noticed that the students were really engaged in their maker lessons, and so we wondered when we saw the makerspace seed project if makerspace could also be used in our English lessons, if this could provide more authentic context for students, and how it might help motivate them to learn English. So we joined the Next Section Makerspace project in August 2019 with Secondary 1, which is the first year group in secondary school. And this year we have extended the project to Secondary 2 students. I'll also talk about how this project has helped these three areas, like the content, ASK, and for pedagogy. We'll present some ideas at the end as they apply to both schools. Here's the timeline of our project. At the beginning, there was teacher training for us to learn more about makerspace and design thinking. After that, we scrutinized the curriculum and co-planned the units of work for S1. We experimented with teaching thinking routines to enrich the original units. Though there was COVID pandemic intervening and online lessons slowed down the progress, we managed to teach what we planned. In April 2021, we had larger implementation and students designed board games using design thinking. It was a great success. Therefore, there is an extension to S2 this year.
Mm.
Okay, so now let's look at the S1 English curriculum. We teach 6 units, and we also need to consider what is practical for us to do and the assessment and exams that we have. Unit 4 and Unit 6 are right before exams, so there is little time for experimentation in them. So being water thinkers, we focused on implementing makerspace in Units 1, 2, 5, and 7. Right from the beginning, we infused thinking routines into the English lessons, introducing them one by one, and then finally introducing design thinking. Today, I'll share with you how we started the entire year in Unit 1 briefly and the teaching of Unit 7 in detail. The topic of Unit 1 is a new start, which is all about the students settling into their new school and writing to their primary school teachers about their experience. In some ways, this is good, authentic. The students are just starting in their new school and they're asked to write about the experience. So, how did Makerspace help to enhance this unit? Before, we used the thinking routine past purposes complexities, and this is the very first one that we introduce students. Before, students learned about the common school facilities, people, and school activities as a fictional school in the textbook. This was good input for them, but the students were then left alone to gather ideas about their new school. This was where Makerspace came in. And they had the real school campus for them to explore, and they used the past purposes complexities to analyze it and learn more about it. For example, this one, they chose the English Aqua Cafe to analyze. So the thinking routines provided a scaffold for the students to closely observe and understand this place. Students use this to analyze and describe it and greatly enrich the content of the letter. On top of the enrichment in content, related useful sentence patterns were introduced, and students were given the freedom to choose what they found interesting and would like to share with their primary school teachers. All these made the letter writing task more meaningful and authentic, and interesting as well. So here I would like to explain how Makerspace helped to enhance this unit of work. As you can see this from the previous slides, originally students read diary entries about common school facilities and people at school, and school activities at a fictional school in the textbook. Through our Makerspace project, we extended the content to cover the authentic situation. We asked the students to observe and analyze their real school, to learn the names of their school's facilities and look closely at the design and functions of the new school, as well as the personalities, strengths, and hobbies of their classmates and their own club meetings. For language learning and ASK, apart from enabling students to talk about things that are generally true by using the simple present, actions in the past by using the simple past, and repeated events by using adverse and adverbial phrases of frequency. Students were taught how to describe things happen at school, language features of diaries, and letters. Together with the thinking routines, students were able to learn the sentence patterns like there is, there are, and we can for describing the past and purposes of the school facilities, understand the design of a venue and appreciate it, how to describe a place and emphasize to readers, that means their primary school teachers, of the letter by choosing more interesting places to describe with them and share with them. And here comes the finale. After nearly a year in the project, what happened in the final unit, Unit 7? What would be the final product be? And the answer is board games. Yeah. All students worked in groups and designed board games. Those you see in the background were made by them. Originally, the final task of Unit 7 was to write a magazine article about the favorite game or toy of parents, grandparents, or students themselves, which the students in previous years found not very interesting, and was just another writing task to be completed to get marks. With makerspace, we changed the focus to designing a board game with rules, the game board, and other necessary parts. And the objective is to design board games to help their peer revise or enrich the topic covered in English this year. Now let's take a look at some of the students' work first. Here are 4 examples of board games made by students in previous years. Can you guess the themes and the interesting parts of them? I'll just give you 1 second. And here comes the answer. So this one is actually called Opposite, based on the idea of Monster Hunter. And the theme is amazing experiences. The most interesting part of this is that the game board is two-sided. Players have to collect weapons on one side in order to attack monsters on the other side. For this one, you can see with a map and flags, it's called Islands of Hong Kong. The theme is also the same as the previous one. The fun thing here is that apart from rolling a die and walking the game piece on the checked boxes, players have to stick flags on the real map of Hong Kong. We're so sure that players will be so familiar with islands in Hong Kong after this game. And for the next one, this colorful board game is designed based on the theme food. You can see a lot of food items there with the prices. Though it looks simple, it has actually combined the aeroplane chess and Monopoly together. And the final one is actually my favorite one, Remember Fast. It's a game for helping players remember vocabulary in all units for tests and exams. The best thing about this is that it is applicable to vocabulary in all units or even all themes, as players simply have to match those vocabulary items to the 10 characters. After revising for some time, character cards are shuffled and put on the card holder, which looks like a sofa to me. The person who can say the correct vocabulary item out fast can get a point. This is my favorite one because the designers could think out of the box. They did not stick to one unit, but made something so universal that was unexpected. So now here comes the question. How these students get to creating board games like these? To begin with, I would like to explain how Makerspace helped to enhance this unit of work. Originally, as you remember, the final task of Unit 7 was to write a magazine article about favorite game or toy of somebody else or themselves. But with Makerspace, the content covers so much more, like commercially available board games, game rules, tokens, game pieces, vocabulary in units covered in the year, and every other things related to those units. The language learning and ASK were also enriched. Imperatives to infinitives, endurance were still important to the unit. Furthermore, students were able to learn about their peers through interviews, cooperate with classmates to create the board games, and learn and practicing their empathy, creativity, perseverance, and even budgeting. So actually, it is incredible. So now let's take a look at the steps we took using the design thinking process. Step 1, analyze. Teachers and students analyze board games in the market and familiarize themselves with the vocabulary related by using thinking routines, past purposes complexities, and past people interaction. And these vocabulary items would be very useful for later stages. Step 2, empathize. Using the thinking routine Think, Feel, Care, students empathize the users who are actually schoolmates in the next class by interviewing them. All students were both designers and users of board games. After getting the interview results, they chose a finding and insight to set the how might we question. This question gave them a clear direction to focus their design on. Step 4, ideate. Teachers demonstrated how to do so by divergent and convergent thinking. Then, hands-on materials like magnets, cardboard, dice, and other things that were provided to students to experiment putting things together. And to stir up their creativity, certain prompts were provided as well. After that, prototype. Within a budget, students had to buy materials to make the prototype of their own board game. It was a rare scene in normal English classrooms that students were producing something like that. With the prototype done, students tested each other's board game. The slide shown here was a reminder for them for what they should bear in mind during the interclass testing. The later stages of the design thinking process are also a great opportunity to coach perseverance because the students need to review their work, face up to weaknesses and failures, and try again to improve their designs. They were given a form with language support to fill in during the test stage. And then, with feedback in hand, designers spotted their problems and made modifications to their designs. After so much hard work, the final versions of board games were displayed and played in the showcase held in July. During the event, students had to vote for their favorite board games, and an award-giving ceremony was held to show appreciation and recognition of the effort paid by students. At the end of the unit, students were asked about their feelings towards the makerspace project. What we find in their reflections are these. They learned about makerspace theories, they had more exposure to English, they finally learned how to take risks when they design things, they find it fun, they learned interpersonal communication skills, they had a sense of achievement, they learned about teamwork, time management, perseverance, budgeting, and creativity. Most of these are values and attitudes that was hard to cultivate in normal English classroom. Then how about teachers? These are the reflections from teachers, like they think that was a non-conventional learning experience, and the best moments must be seeing students playing their self-made board games with a lot of laughter. It was so fun. It was motivating and inspiring. And now they know that makerspace is actually a mindset, and it should not be bounded by the language. It can happen actually everywhere, and English as a tool that makerspace can also happen in English classrooms. And the project provided an organic setting with the teaching of English language and generic skills and values, as we mentioned before. And both teachers and students become more reflective, responsive, and creative. And all this benefits students in the long run, even in the DSE. So here I would like to explain a little bit about why this project would be related to the DSE. As an experienced teacher, actually I start teaching the DSE right from the very beginning, the first year. I would say most candidates of the DSE lack content in their writing. They don't have many ideas, let alone the elaboration and creativity. With makerspace and design thinking process, students can be trained to look more closely in things around them and become more confident in creative thoughts. Hong Kong students are so afraid of making mistakes because maybe their teachers would blame them, or they are afraid that they would look embarrassed in the classroom, blah, 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 peer pressure, parents pressure. Yeah, there are a lot of things that make them feel so scared of being creative. And moreover, with makerspace, they are more able to empathize people, which help them give better advice in more detail. Apart from that, they would be more persevering in learning the language and more positive about overcoming obstacles. Because, in makerspace projects, you have so many obstacles. Most of them are, rock thinkers. And this project actually teach them how to be water thinkers. So makerspace and design thinking worth teaching and trying, as it not only does good to students learning, but also teaches growth as well. As a vice panel chair, I would say this benefits teachers, especially the new ones as well. So talking about the pedagogy, as I've mentioned, teachers become better teachers as well. There are two which we would like to share with you here. The first one is the explicit teaching of the thinking routines and design thinking process, which means we teach them in a direct and structured way. We created a makerspace handbook in which we presented the routines and the design thinking process, which we refer to throughout and consistently use the terms and prompts in all of the worksheets and posters that we created. This helped the students to become familiar with the routines, and we hope that eventually they will be able to use them independently, even in reading or listening tasks. And another pedagogy that we find very good is this one. Very simple. There are only 3 steps involved. Step 1, the teacher demonstrates. Step 2, the teacher and students work together. Step 3, students work on their own in groups or individually. This is called the gradual release of responsibility, or we say GRR. During the Makerspace project, we were introduced to this pedagogy, and it helped us clearly guide and empower our students. Students were confident in completing the steps and tasks on their own as they truly knew what to do. For example, if a thinking routine was new to them, we demonstrated each step of a thinking routine first, before doing it together with the students, before asking the students to do it in groups, and then finally independently.
Yeah, I think we'll skip this slide because we're a little bit short of time and we want to leave people with a chance to ask us some questions. So I think it's time to land this plane.
Yeah.
So back to our question, can makerspace and design thinking help English language learning in local Hong Kong schools? I hope at this point, the presentation, you agree with us that it can. So we think, yes, it can, because it motivates and interests students. It broadens the content of lessons, provides opportunities for authentic use of English, and can connect students to their own experience and their own environment, for example, in a way that Anita connected her students with their own school. So they weren't writing about this fictional school, or they weren't left to their own devices to observe a school, but they were assisted in doing that and connected to that real experience, which made that writing task a lot more meaningful than it was before we had the Makerspace project. So yes, it can help English language learning, but also it provides a lot of opportunities to coach those 21st century learning skills and mindsets like problem solving, creativity, collaboration, agency, perseverance, and empathy. So just a little note on what made these projects successful. I think, firstly, it was about the teachers' interest in aspects of design and the idea of makerspace. In both these schools, we had teachers who were interested in that concept. Secondly, there was good teamwork. At Seaward Wood College, there was myself and Adam and also my colleague Stephen Cooley working together, and project advisors, Albert Chong from Solno. Yeah. And the other teachers at Seaward Wood College were a little bit nervous about being involved in the project, but were still using those makerspace materials. And there was a very strong team at UCAN Hing. And obviously, by this time, Anita and I have been working a lot together, and that's helped greatly. And that is to say, also, I should say that really the teachers, Adam and Anita, are the most important players, the most important people, because they're the ones who are implementing the project at the chalk face. Thirdly, opportunities for regular practice of thinking routines and design thinking process, so a little bit of lesson time is needed. And then fourthly, seeing obstacles as challenges to be met. But that's not to say that there aren't some obstacles which we can't just leap over. We still have to be water thinkers. Exams and assessments still need to be done and integrated into project units of work. So yeah, a very key thing was to be a water thinker during this project, and not to think of the rocks getting in the way and to give up, but to look for opportunities to flow around those obstacles. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Plane has now landed.
Yeah.
And if there's time, 7 minutes, we can take a few questions.
Do you want to just have a look at the chat there, guys, and decide which one you want to answer? And I can put them up on the screen.
I will come out of the... Okay, come out of the screen. Okay. All right.
I can click on one of the questions that I have first here, which is, how did you evaluate the impact of these makerspace interventions?
Okay, in a few ways, but I can think of one, which is, I think one of the measures of success is whether with the end task that the students were doing. So, for example, with the writing of a letter to the primary teacher about their new school, if the students are able to write more effectively at the end of that makerspace project compared to how they did previously, if they were to write with more color, more detail, more elaboration, if their writing improves, that's a real sign that this has been really effective. Not only for their 21st century learning skills, but also for their English language skills. Mm-hmm. So I think there are a few answers there, but that's certainly a key one for me.
Yeah, and at the same time, as we've mentioned, that like we local teachers are like the second parents of students. So we actually can observe the changes of students in attitudes and other areas throughout the years because of the intervention of Makerspace, because we provide a lot of authentic chances for them to explore things around them and to learn about empathy and stuff, and perseverance, things like that. So this can be another thing that we can evaluate as well. And we don't just do the assessment of learning, but also assessment for learning of learning both, to show the progress.
That kind of connects. I just put up Lauren's one of Lauren's questions here. What kinds of challenges do the students face regarding the pedagogy when designing the games and apps?
What kind of challenges? Well, I think, one of the challenges I think we have to recognize is that for some of the students, at a very basic level, coming up from primary school, they weren't used to collaborating. They weren't used to even pair work or some kind of group discussion, let alone collaborating on a project together. So I think, and that speaks for one of the values of this kind of project for secondary school students in Hong Kong, is that it facilitates that process of introducing group work and collaboration into classrooms where students simply haven't had that opportunity before. So I know that with your students, Anita, that was an issue.
Yeah.
Students were, and that's been amplified by COVID and the fact that students have been working from home, so they didn't know each other very well. So that was certainly one of the obstacles.
Yeah, and at the same time, they did not know how to, like, apart from communicating with the group mates, they did not know how to share the work of the whole project. The leaders may take up too much work, and then the others would become free riders. But why this would happen? We teachers have to intervene and teach them. You have to distribute the workload evenly and stuff like that. This has to be taught as well. Yeah.
But certainly when it came to the creative parts, when they were, for example, making the board game or making the app, and they had a Google Slides to work with, and at Anita's school where they had the board game prototype with the squares and different shapes of cardboard and different objects to use, that was not a problem for them. They were very happy to be creative, and they came up, as you saw, with lots of really exciting ideas for their board games. So that once we gave them that opportunity and gave them a few tools to use, that went very smoothly.
Yeah, as long as the teachers can provide a very safe environment for them to be creative, that the teachers would be encouraging them to think freely about everything. If the teachers are there to always say that, no, this is wrong, this is not logical, this doesn't make sense, and things like that, then students may back off. But teachers have to be really encouraging in these projects.
Interesting. I have another question here, and we have maybe time for 2 more questions. One is around, I'm always personally very interested in this idea of culture, and schools both reproduce culture in this context that they're in, but they also create culture. And as you said, Anita, there's the parent and the teacher, right? The kind of 2 sides of working with kids. And I'm wondering, how did you involve parents in this at all? Because it strikes me this could be a powerful way for parents to see a new kind of learning, one that maybe they're not necessarily accustomed to.
Yeah, we did not really inform parents about the showcase, but at the beginning of the whole project, actually we told parents about this project, that how it would benefit their children, and how we are going to change a little bit about the English lessons. And throughout the process, we have taken pictures and keep recording students' progress and stuff. And at the end, we produce articles in the school magazines and some other magazines, even in the EDB. We did sharing. We even asked students to go to EDB and do the sharing together and stuff like this. So I would say parents are the ones who are very open-minded and support this project, so that it was a good project and it was a success.
Oh, that's great. Another question here. Hang on, so we just add it up here. If I'm interested in marrying the maker mindset with language learning, what conditions would I need to fulfill first, or what kind of groundwork would I need to lay?
Okay, that's a very complicated question. I think you have to think about the personnel that you have involved, and the teachers and their interests, how open they are to working in a new area, a new content area, whether they themselves are risk takers and prepared to get involved in that. It involves some opening up of the curriculum, right? And some, in some cases, dramatic change. In other places, those rocks are still there. We still have to attend to those areas of the curriculum that are central to it, exams and unit tests and things like that. So I think the key thing is the attitude of the teachers.
Yeah.
What do you think, Anita?
Well, for me, because I know that a lot of teachers are not as open-minded as all teachers. Yeah. So if you would like to be a pioneer or the change maker, I would say you be the change first and start from something small. Maybe you can simply apply one of the thinking routines in a certain unit and then show people that this can really help. Once people are persuaded, they would be very interested in knowing more, and then you can tempt them to work together with you. First, start from one thinking routine, then two, then three. And for myself, even when I'm teaching reading, like a text, no matter it is in junior form or secondary or senior forms, I would use some of the thinking routines to help them understand the text. Yeah, it's not applied to a certain paper or a certain unit, but we have to be the thinkers ourselves. Even we are teachers, yeah, we are actually makers as well. You start from something small, let people know it, then it would be the best promotion of the maker mindset.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, if you want kids to take risks in their learning, the adults in the room, the teachers, need to also model that as well. So that's a
Yes.
cultural
Yeah,
change. Yeah.
and I think you have to be prepared to have some moments in your lesson where you're opening up and allowing that creativity to happen. For example, when you have the bits and pieces of the board game the cardboard, etc., the different objects, and give those to the students and see what they come up with. And you have to have a bit of faith in the students that they can do that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. We're at just a few minutes after the hour. So thank you very much, Richard and Anita. That was a really amazing and inspiring presentation about some innovative stuff happening in Hong Kong schools. So as someone living in Hong Kong, I'm really happy about that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Justin.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.